Let's dive right into this cinematic comic explainer and meet our team. We've got a PhD scholar, an MBA student, and a corporate analyst. And honestly, they're completely overwhelmed. Picture them just staring at their screens, surrounded by this messy, totally uninterpretable data. They put in the time, they sent out all the links, but what came back is just a chaotic jumble of contradictions. It is literally a researcher's worst nightmare.
So, while they're agonizing over this sprawling, confusing data, a research mentor steps into the room and drops a crucial reality check on them. A poor questionnaire creates poor data, even before the analysis begins. Listen, no amount of advanced statistical software or brilliant dashboard design can save you if the questions you asked were just fundamentally flawed from the start. The foundation of any good analysis isn't the math at all, it's the measurement.
All right, let's get into step 1. Define your data requirements.
Our mentor grabs a marker, heads straight to the whiteboard, and asks the most foundational question. What exactly do you need to measure? To build a rock-solid survey, we first have to really understand our variables. Think of the independent variable as your cause or predictor, and the dependent variable as the effect or outcome. But, as we know, it's rarely that simple in the real world. We also have to watch out for mediating variables. Those stand right in the middle and actually pass the effect along. And then you've got moderating variables, which act kind of like a volume dial, changing the strength or even the direction of the relationship. To see how all this builds together, the mentor walks the team through connecting their broad research objectives all the way down to specific decision needs. It's a clear pipeline. You start by identifying the underlying theory. From there, you define your specific variables. Once you've got those, you generate hypotheses, those tentative, testable predictions about how those variables relate. And finally, you map those variables directly to the actual survey items you're going to write.
Mapping variables to research questions and individual survey items is absolutely vital because it ensures nothing is left to chance. For example, if you have an independent variable like prior publications, that links to a specific descriptive research question which then maps directly to, say, questions 11 through 15 on your survey. Here is the golden rule. If a question on your survey does not map back to a variable and a research question, it simply shouldn't be there. Period.
Moving right along to step 2, choose what to measure.
With our blueprint in place, the mentor divides the survey content into 2 distinct categories, which really helps clarify what kind of data we're actually collecting. The big takeaway here is separating factual, demographic questions, which is straightforward and usually pretty accurate, from opinion-based questions. Factual data like age, gender, education, and industry, super important for comparing different groups. But attitudes, opinions, satisfaction, motivation, those require a lot more context and deep thought. You just have to handle these 2 types of data entirely differently when you're crafting your wording.
So that brings us to step 3. Write clean, scaled questions. This is the actual writing phase, which is exactly where bad surveys usually fall apart, and where our team made their biggest mistakes. The mentor introduces them to what we call the survey villains. These are poorly constructed items that will completely nuke the validity of your data. We're talking about leading questions that practically tell the respondent what to answer, loaded questions that tap into socially desirable biases, vague wording that leaves people scratching their heads, and heavy technical jargon. But honestly, the absolute sneakiest villain of them all is the double-barreled question.
Let's actually correct a double-barreled question right now. Consider this bad example. Do you think there's a good market and the product will sell well? Think about it. If someone clicks yes, what on earth are they agreeing to? That there's a good market? Or just that the product will sell? We literally don't know. It's completely impossible to interpret. The fix is wonderfully simple. Just break it into 2 completely separate questions.
Once the wording is clean, we have to select the right scale. You've got nominal scales for basic categories and ordinal scales for simple rankings. But interval and ratio scales, those are the holy grail. They offer so much analytical flexibility. They allow you to calculate means, find standard deviations, and run all those advanced statistics and structural equation models that our PhD scholar and corporate analyst are just desperate to use. Imagine mapping your variables to a Likert scale matrix, effectively turning subjective attitudes into quantifiable, interval-like data. You might use an itemized rating scale asking people the extent to which their managers treat them with dignity and respect, ranging from, to a large extent, all the way down to, not at all. By sticking to a consistent 5-point or 7-point scale, we can sum the scores across multiple items to create a highly reliable composite score for a really complex variable, like job satisfaction.
And here, the mentor drops a pro tip that is a real game changer. deliberately mix in negatively worded questions. Why? Because it completely stops people from just mindlessly clicking strongly agree down the entire page. It's brilliant. If you ask, "My work is very interesting," follow it up a bit later with, "Life without my work would be dull." It breaks their mechanical rhythm. You just have to remember that during the data processing phase, you'll need to reverse score those negative items, so a 5 becomes a 1, making sure your final data points in the exact same direction.
Okay, step 4. Flow, length, and testing.
Writing the questions is really only half the battle. How we arrange them determines whether people will actually finish the whole thing or just slam the browser window shut. Using a funnel approach is key. We start with simple, broad, easy questions to build confidence. In the middle, once they're engaged but not yet tired, we hit them with the complex rating scales. And finally, we push all the sensitive, personal, demographic stuff to the very end. That way, if someone drops out because they don't want to share their income, hey, you still captured all their amazing attitude data from the middle.
Next up, it is time for a pilot test with a small sample group. You cannot skip this. By watching real people take the survey, our team instantly catches confusing phrasing, they realize they missed options on multiple choice questions, and they spot repetition that they were just too close to the project to see themselves. A pilot test is basically the ultimate reality check.
Which brings us to step 5, the final survey checklist.
The messy data crisis is almost completely averted. But there is one final, absolutely non-negotiable step before hitting send: informed consent. We see a vital moment where the team ensures every single participant fully understands the research. They draft a crystal clear introductory statement. They explicitly state exactly how the participants' data will be handled, how securely it's going to be protected, and they make it perfectly clear that participation is 100% voluntary. No one should ever be forced to respond. Respecting your participants builds trust, and trust leads to honest, highly reliable data.
So this final checklist acts as our ultimate safeguard. Does every question align with an objective? Check. Is the wording clean of any survey villains? Check. Are we using the right interval scales? Check. Do we have ethical, informed consent? Check. Do we run the pilot test? Check. Every single question now totally justifies its existence.
And finally, the result. Our PhD scholar, MBA student, and corporate analyst are no longer stressed out. They pull up their dashboards and the charts are pristine. The relationships between the variables are statistically significant and the insights are just profound. They took a chaotic situation and successfully generated beautifully clean data from an expertly architected questionnaire.
Because remember, good analysis doesn't start with a spreadsheet, it starts with a well-designed question. By understanding your variables, dodging those survey villains, and fiercely protecting your participants' consent, you open the door to incredible discoveries. So I leave you with this. What fascinating insights will your perfectly designed questions uncover next?